Why is NBN's HFC rollout ground to a halt?
And is Kayo becoming Australia's sports streaming heavyweight? Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support. Hi there, welcome back to Vertical Hold Behind the Tech News, where we catch up with Australia's leading technology journalists to dive into the big tech stories of the week. I'm Adam Turner, and I'm joined as always by our resident sports ball fan, rampaging Alex Kidman. Alex, how about those Dolphins, eh?
Look, I keep telling them, if they put Dan Marino back in the quarterback position, then, well, he'd fall apart because he's actually 59. But maybe that's why my application to be the new Dolphins head coach fell through.
I'm actually impressed you got that reference at all. I think this show is definitely rubbing off on you. This week, we're also joined once again by the former roof attack for the London Jets, ZDNet Australia editor Chris Duckett. Chris, welcome back to the show.
Good to be back, gents. And as a long-suffering Bucks fan, we made a deal with the devil, and the devil has taken us to the big show. And he's old.
Okay, I'm a bit behind. Who are the Bucks?
Buccaneers in the Super Bowl. Signed Tom Brady, oldest cheat in the business.
That must be soon. That must be this week, yeah?
Yeah, next Monday.
I've lost track.
When I know more about a sports story than Adam does, we're in some weird alternate dimension here.
We're through the looking glass.
I'm glad we've broken everything at about the 2-minute mark.
So speaking of breaking everything, this week it's another hot serve of our soup du jour, the NBN. Chris is going to talk us through the latest dramas with the HFC rollout and what else is happening with the NBN. But first, it's sports ball time. Chris,
Hey.
Foxtel and Kayo have smacked down a few competitors to win a bigger slice of Australia's streaming sports deals. What's the latest?
So earlier this week, Telstra decided that they were going to shelve what they called their Live Pass, which was basically Telstra signed these deals to do the official apps for NRL, AFL, also netball and the A-League. Now, in those apps, they have a function where you can, if you're a customer of Telstra, you get to stream those matches for free. Well, that part is being shelved and replaced with Kayo. And in the way Telstra has changed everything in the last couple of years, they're giving you something more expensive, but they're then giving you a discount for the first 12 months. So if you sign up with this deal, a Kayo subscription is usually $25. If you've previously enabled Live Pass, you get $20 off for the first year. And if you've never enabled Live Pass, you still have the standing $10 a month discount that Telstra offers. So it's a different way of basically delivering more or less the same thing in the apps, but they basically get you onto the Kayo platform.
Is anyone going to lament the demise of Live Pass?
Nope. As someone that tried to get it onto a TV once or twice, I will not miss it at all. Kayo is better. If you care about any sports and if you've enabled Live Pass, presumably you do, you're probably very likely to either be a Foxtel customer or a Kayo customer already.
So one of the worst things about Live Pass was that you were limited to a 7-inch picture, right? So it was terrible trying to get onto a TV or even on a tablet.
Yeah, and the apps that come out of Foxtel, I mean, some months they'll decide that something like Chromecast exists, and then the next month they won't.
Ooh.
Yeah. Whereas Kayo jumps between different sized devices, and it finds its way onto new Chromecast and Apple TVs and probably the TVs themselves. But yeah, it's just a better product. Simply, it's just that it doesn't have the free data that Telstra was offering before.
Well, that's the rub, isn't it? That if you get Kayo, but if you're using it on a mobile device, then it's using up your data. And okay, a lot of Telstra's plans now have that weird endless data thing, but it's at like 1.5 meg. At which point you might be pining for Live Pass, wouldn't you?
Oh, you might be, but at the same time, Telstra has boosted all their quotas to, frankly, stupid levels. Like their small plan is more than enough for the average Joe. It's only real data junkies that are going to think to themselves, I need to get on that Telstra Large plan. So I can kind of see how Telstra have decided, well, they probably do have the numbers there to go say, like, most of our customers only use, just to pull some numbers out of the air, somewhere between, say, 15-35% of the quota every year. There's plenty of headroom. They could use that up with sports if they wanted.
That pricing thing's weird though as well, because I would have thought in that competitive telco market, you want to attract new customers, but what they're basically saying is, hey, existing customers, you can have really cheap Kayo. New customers, yeah, we'll give you a discount, but not as good.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not as weird as the central weirdness to this whole thing, which is before this week, it was Telstra v Kayo v Foxtel, and they're all the same company at the end of the day.
Well, they
Telstra,
all own bits of each other.
yeah, exactly. Telstra owns 35% of Foxtel. Foxtel looks after, Foxtel has a subsidiary called Stream Motion, which runs Kayo. So Foxtel's basically fighting against itself, and then the Telstra mothership just jumps into the middle of the Royal Rumble and decides it's just going to punch on anyway. So at least Telstra's finally picked a side, because LivePass wasn't much chop, beyond streaming live events. So they have done a better deal with Kayo, but it is just a case of which end of the snake eats the other end first, because it turns out this is a snake with a mouth at both ends.
Telstra, though, and I'm guessing this is just contractual obligation, they're going to keep those apps going, the AFL and the NRL ones at least, but without the live streaming. Who wants that? Because, obviously I'm divorced from the whole sports thing.
Well, once you sign up for a Kayo connection, you don't really use those apps. The benefit of those apps is to get free streaming. Presumably, once you have a Kayo subscription, the usability of those apps drops off. And Telstra's doing these apps because it all just bundles into, they pay for the digital rights, they pay sponsorship for these two leagues. So it's all wrapped in contracts and all sorts of stuff. And it's really not much. I mean, I'm sure these apps, they're not burning holes in the balance sheet. So they're just a nice little thing that they sort of do for them.
So does Telstra still have the rights to streaming AFL and NRL under the last deal? And have they kind of handed those rights across to Kayo, or did something change? Is it a new rights deal?
Oh, look, without going through the pages, because once again, this is the same companies we're talking about.
Yeah.
Look, it's somewhere in the Foxtel house is probably the best way of saying it. Telstra says it has the rights. So, maybe they just have to get on the blower to AFL HQ and say, we'd like to push it through Kayo, and they go, okay, fine. If that's the channel you're going to use, that's a channel you're going to use. I don't think there's too much to read into that, just because it's just a web of just colliding interests, basically.
Yeah. But Andy Penn, the head of Telstra, said that he doesn't think that LivePass and Kayo Sports are competitors. Well, it's hard for Kayo to compete with LivePass when LivePass is basically dead in the water.
Yeah, and even previously, if you happen to be a person that just liked NRL and you were a Telstra customer, then okay, LivePass was your sports. But typically, people that will like one sport will like to watch other sports, even just casual. Maybe not. They don't get as fired up about them, but they might want to jump in and out. And Kayo or Foxtel were there. So I don't know the numbers, obviously, of how much usage LivePass has, but I would expect that over the years it has probably been trending down as people jump on Kayo, because as we've seen in some recent financials out of Foxtel, Kayo's just getting the users.
Well, sports has been, the thing that sells Foxtel. Actually, on that whole other sports thing as well, Kayo's also snaffled up the local netball rights. And while that's maybe not as big nationally as AFL or NRL, it's still another thing heading their way, which would lend credence to your position on, hey, there's all these other things on Kayo.
Yeah, and there's also a weird thing with this LivePass, right? Like, it's only AFL and NRL LivePass. There's still netball and A-League LivePass, and they're still going, even though A-League and netball are going to be on Kayo. So it probably just shows you how much development resources are thrown at the MyFootball and the Netball apps, I would say, that they can't even swap it out with the other two because the platform already has it. It's right there. You've just got to pull the same widget across, go for broke. But Telstra has done what they've done, and maybe it's tied up in their sponsorship arrangements since they've got naming rights on Marvel Stadium in Melbourne, and they're always plastered all over the rugby league. So might have something to do with that.
So the netball deal gets particularly complicated because Foxtel gets a $40 million grant from the government, which basically there was no tender and very little oversight, to develop women's sports and to broadcast lower profile sports. Now, Nine's pretty dirty because they had to deal with for the netball for 5 years, and no one handed them $40 million to help them get this over the line. So is this a little bit shifty?
Is handing Foxtel free money shifty when you have two public broadcasters who would show this stuff for less money? Look, there's a lot of mileage to be made out of the words federal ICAC. I'm sure they would love to take a look at that. But Paul Fletcher's probably busy with a certain Leppington triangle. Who knows?
So basically, taxpayers are paying to get it on to Kayo, so they then have to pay again to watch it on Kayo.
How good is neoliberalism, boys? How good is it?
But at least it's cheaper for a year, and then it's more expensive.
I mean, there is no better summation of the entire culture war that comes out of Canberra than, you could tell the ABC that they have to carry the netball, but no, you go and give money to Foxtel. It's the same sort of stuff that plays into this media code, right? Where it's, we need money to fund journalism. It's going to go into buying media execs Maseratis. It's not going to go to hire journalists, right?
Exactly.
And this is the same deal with this. Here's $40 million to show netball. Enjoy your new Porsche.
So while Porsche salesmen would obviously be very excited about this, who should be nervous? Optus Sport, Stan Sport? I mean, you've got to throw in Amazon as well. They're keeping things interesting. They've just signed a deal with Swimming Australia to stream the 2021 Australian Olympic swimming trials from Adelaide in June, running up to the Tokyo Olympics. So, I mean, in the long run, Amazon could be the dark horse in this sports streaming race.
Stan Sport is weird. Just straight up weird. I must confess that I am a rugby tragic. Now, I've fallen a bit off the bandwagon because New South Wales is properly awful and Wallabies have caught the disease for the past half decade. But there is no way I'm paying extra money on Stan for rugby. It's just not happening. So that one is just weird. Optus Sport is a weird one because, it's not as weird as Stan, but it's not quite sure how to read that one because it seems like you would think that, a telco has broadcast rights to a very popular sport. How are they going to get this out to the people? Well, they have. People have gone and purchased Optus Sport who have nothing to do with Optus. So I think because Optus is running off the Singtel machine, which also has the rights in Singapore to the EPL and all that sort of stuff, I don't know if they're terribly scared. In fact, I think they're just going to keep doing what they're doing because they're the new entrant into the space anyway. It's more of Foxtel /Kayo /Telstra looking over their shoulder to see what those guys go into next rather than what the big behemoth in the space is actually doing.
Are we at risk of going back to the bad old days where Foxtel has everything locked up, or is it not so much the bad old days because Kayo is more affordable?
Yeah, I would say that is the bad old days will remain in the past. We could return to the slightly bad old days, but Kayo is better and the price is a lot cheaper and everyone's sharing logins anyway. So it's not the same environment that it was 15 years ago. Let's put it that way.
So as long as you don't run out of brother-in-laws to share logins with, you'll be fine.
Yes. And look, if any platform out there wants to go and sell me only F1 rights for $5 a month, I will go to your service and I will drop Kayo. That's like that one niche sport that kept me paying Foxtel for many, many, many years, and I still do. But Kayo is better. We often say, I often come on here and say things are still bad, but it used to be a lot worse. And I think this is yet another instance of this.
Isn't that, though, kind of getting back to Optisport and Stan, isn't that competitive pressure thing, though, that Foxtel as a full package is still pretty pricey. Kayo is more affordable, but Kayo is more affordable because they don't want people thinking, 25, 30, if they raise the price or whatever, but even 25. Well, Optus only wants, and Stan only want like $10 a month or something like that. And with an awful lot of Optus, if you're willing to be a customer, it's just in the package. You just get it. You pay no extra. So isn't Kayo under a lot more pressure to stay cheap?
Well, it depends who you think Kayo's biggest competitor is. The way I look at it, it looks like Kayo thinks Foxtel is its biggest competitor rather than Optus Sport. I have nothing, I have no evidence to back this up. This is just going on general feels, but Optus only has EPL, sitting over there and a couple of other things. They don't sort of have like a second tent pole. If Optus went out and landed something of the size of the AFL or the NRL, now we're talking. Or the cricket's still out there as well, right? If Optus got that, very interesting situation. But as long as it's primarily focused around one league and stuff, the two biggest animals in this fight is Foxtel fighting itself as Kayo.
So it seems every single time we declare that the NBN as our soup du jour is done, it's off the menu, it's no longer even a secret menu item, it seems to come bouncing back into view. And this week it's all about, HFC, or it's all about not HFC. Chris, why couldn't I get a new HFC connection on the NBN if I wanted one?
Coronavirus.
The HFC has coronavirus? Why did I not know about this?
It's gone from minks into networking technologies. That's correct.
It's all that 5G. It's all that 5G.
5G permeates everything we do.
Yeah.
Thank you, Craig Kelly. Pleasure to have you on the program. So the reason this comes down to coronavirus is because there's been rumblings over the past quarter or so warning that the chip foundries that are in Asia have had production issues, basically related to issues associated with coronavirus, like having to lock down and all this sort of stuff. And NBN sent an alert to the telcos this week saying, hey, it hit us. And by the way, we're giving you, was it somewhere between 36 or 48 hours to get all your orders in before we close them down? Now, if you've got a pitchfork and you're ready to go and burn down NBN HQ, can I also suggest that on the way you go visit the people at that very small company called AMD, because they're also suffering coronavirus supply side issues. It's just there is so much demand for chipsets and people are making other stuff or they've got other supply issues. So consequently, if you move into a new premise and it is not connected to the NBN and it uses HFC, you're stuffed. There's no other way for it. For the next few months, you're stuffed. If you've previously been on the NBN and you're moving into a premise, NBN reckons that they've got enough reserves to get by for existing NBN customers. If your HFC endpoint breaks, NBN says that they have enough supplies to get through. So the number of new premises being added to the HFC footprint for the next several, can't remember the exact wording they use, but definitely for 8 to 12 weeks is going to be 0.
So what happens to those people? Because there is the service guarantee, I think, that they changed that said if they can't hook you up within a certain time, they need to hook you up with something else. How do you think that the telcos will deal with this? Well,
I think this is why they're not taking new orders. If you don't take a new order, you don't have to meet the conditions of it, which is, it really did start when, Comsday put this out and said, here's the actual publicity. Because I was looking around NBN, I was looking around telco sites. You couldn't, apart from one post I saw in a TPG user forum and a very tiny piece of text I found when you put your address into the rollout map on NBN's site, beyond the media, there wasn't anyone saying, hey, if you want to hook up a joint, you have to hook it up. On that conditions, there's probably a loophole in there now that the NBN is quote unquote complete. And NBN's making a lot of, they're pointing to the fact that, hey, we've already got millions on this technology. So, for those poor buggers that are stuffed, there ain't too many of them. So, we're kind of, don't look over there. But yeah, if you were planning on hooking up a HFC premise, I'm sorry. Like, it's just, you are in a hole. I'm sorry.
Has NBN said anything, though, about the whole 18-month connection window? Because you mentioned it being NBN complete. That came with that whole, you've got 18 months to hook up, otherwise it's on you. If they're not accepting the conditions for connection, does that mean that I get the 2, 3, 6, however long this much lasts on top of my 18 months?
Knowing the way NBN does these things, I would suggest that they're not going to extend. They'll just say that they can complete you before the end of the window.
That could be painful for some people. That could be genuinely really tight. I mean, I am on HFC. I'm probably thinking about it at the end of my 18-month window, which means there's probably people quite near me who are, well, they're in a bit of trouble. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I mean, this, the thing is this boils down to stuff that has gone on overseas in foundries that NBN doesn't control that is probably, abstracted away from it. It's not like they wanted this pause, but it is another HFC pause, make no mistake about it, for connecting new customers. It absolutely is. And if there is a very large number of people that can't get on or there's conditions like this, they'll probably work through them on a case-by-case basis. And, much like the old Fight Club equation, once that number gets above X, they'll issue a general waiver or something.
So, yeah, rephrasing my question from earlier, I said, what are the telcos going to do? And you said, well, I'll just stop taking orders. But people aren't going to stop moving houses. So what happens when I move house, can't get in, I ring the TIO and say, this is bullshit, they won't hook me up. What are you going to do about it? Knowing full well that the TIO and everyone else is bloody useless sometimes. But, in theory, if people actually pulled their finger out, what could they do? Could they force the telcos to say, all right, you need to give that customer a wireless connection or something else?
That would be interesting where that would fall. If you were moving into a premise without an NBN connection and you needed one, let's presume that premise was connected, say, on the Telstra network. The TO might turn around and say, well, you've still got access via the Telstra HFC network. Go talk to them. But then, of course, like Alex is saying, that has a limited time frame as well.
But Telstra could also give you one of their 4G fallback modems and just say, well, you're stuck on that until the cable starts to work, which is better than nothing.
Yeah, but that's not going to work so much because the chip issue it's not in the modem, it's in the net termination device, the box that the modem hooks into.
Although if you did sign up with Telstra, or to be fair, Vodafone do the same thing as well, the whole 4G fallback thing. In their terms and conditions, that should work because they actually state, if we have trouble connecting you, you can stay on the 4G for as long as you like. But what people need to be aware of there is it's significantly speed limited 4G. It's not 4G as good as we can do it. It's off the top of my head, I think I want to say it tops out at about 12 meg, maybe worse.
Yeah,
certainly experimentally, I've seen it a lot worse.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't be surprised if you walked into a telco and said, I want to hook this place up. They look it into their computer. They turn around and they go, oh, you're on a HFC pause. 5G hotspot?
Big sales opportunity.
Yeah. Oh, opportunities everywhere, Alex. Always opportunities.
Well, anecdotally, they're certainly still working on HFC. I think I don't go a week without being told that the HFC in my area is being worked on and it's going to go down for a while. And duly, it does.
Yes. Well, they've said that they're still going to be able to do repairs, and obviously the work they do on the network itself doesn't rely on these endpoint chipsets that the supply chain has fallen through on. So, yeah, they can still continue trying to make Optus cable work if there's any of it still left in the ground.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's called a fiber to the curb footprint, that thing is called.
Oh, I wish.
So it seems to me that while people slag off the various aspects of the multi-technology mix, it's actually HFC that's taken a bit of a battering in the last few months. People seem to be slagging that off more. Is that just me, or have you noticed that too?
Well, look, I've been slagging off HFC for a long time.
I mean, more than usual.
Especially when I was on a Telstra connection limited to 1 megabit upload. I mean, that was a wild half decade, wasn't it?
Fun times.
Very fun times. I mean, look, the NBN is in a place where I can best describe it as if you're building a house and you sort of get the keys and then you have that period where you walk through and you pick out everything the builder missed. That's kind of where the NBN is right now.
Yeah.
Now, let's forget the fact that the NBN was an owner-builder, so it built the house. But, it's kind of at the point where most of the stuff's there in place and they're already planning the first couple of renovations. NBN is going out. They've got the upgrades I spoke about previously. They're doing tests with 5G, which is the obvious upgrade on the fixed wireless network. They're getting propagation distances that millimeter wave, I think they got it up to 1 kilometer recently, which millimeter wave's not really meant to do. Well, obviously you can do it if you put enough power into it, but everyone's like, oh no, millimeter waves, you need to be 30 meters away from the hotspot. Yeah, well, NBN and Ericsson and those guys, they've got some different thoughts about that. So they are planning to do some stuff, but yeah, HFC is it's this sinkhole because it's last century's technology, essentially. But it just turns out that it is a technology that can get you somewhere between 50 and 100 megabits reliably, and that's what their statement of expectations says is all they have to do.
So where did they get up to with the 3.1 DOCSIS upgrade, which was upgrading the cable network to give people faster uploads and downloads?
Yeah, I've been waiting for that one a long time. Coming.
Still coming, is it?
I mean,
I assumed it was done.
They've got it on. I should have some evidence in front of me, but I suspect it's on. If it's not on parts of the network, it should be close, but it's not widely spread. I don't know. Somebody from NBN will probably email me and say that's totally wrong, and we did it during the pandemic, and it's like, well, I wasn't paying attention. I was locked inside.
They've definitely got some of it rolled out, but if you are in an HFC footprint area, it's totally that thing where you sort of have to look up and go, hey, what from an ISP? You've got to look up and say, hey, can I get a better than 100 meg connection? And if you're lucky, you can. And if you're unlucky, you can't. And like so many other NBN things, that's your lot.
Yeah, and I don't think they're probably doing mail drops saying, hey, DOCSIS 3.1. Because you could imagine the inquiries if they started doing that. So yeah, I think you could probably be some of the most, NBN technically aware person. And if you just haven't had a look at what your connection is capable of, you might not even know it's there. And I'm pretty sure that's probably how they want it.
So speaking of faster than 100 meg, recently there was a story that NBN was kicking around the idea that you would have to, in order to get the free fiber upgrade they've been talking about, you would have to order a 250 meg plan. Do you think they go that way? Is that going to fly? Does that seem to make a mockery of the whole thing that was a mockery of itself to begin with?
Mockery, you say? I think that's exactly what they'll do. That is that is sort of the level that I would expect. It's like they would only, you put it at a high price point, you get the true believers in first who pay the money, and then you start dropping it down. We see this with every access technology, right? There's a reason, say, on Telstra plans you don't get 5G on the small, actually quite large plan, for instance, right?
Mm.
So I think they'll do the same thing. 250 is something. Yeah, I would not be shocked at all if it was 250. Because that is the next step up from if you think your network can reliably deliver 100, which is NBN say black and blue that their access technologies can do 100, the step up from 100 is 250. So that's probably their reasoning for it.
If anyone from NBN is listening, I'll take 250, but you'll have to run a lot of fiber because of all that inconvenient HFC that's in the way.
Yes, but that's why they're only doing it for fibre to the node at the moment, Alex. The poor old HFC. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're more likely to end up in the fibre to the curb footprint in 10 years.
Which wouldn't be that
I like your
bad,
optimism.
really.
No,
Fibre to the curb's not a bad compromise, really.
No, it's not. No, it's actually a very fine technology because the copper runs are under, typically, except out Alex's way, but the copper runs are generally shorter than when you notice the drop off in the power coming down the line. So no, fibre to the curb is generally a good solution. I mean, I'm in an apartment block that has fibre to the basement, which is just fibre to the curb by a different name, really. It sort of works exactly the same. It comes into the basement, then it hooks up to a bunch of copper. It can get around about 130, so it's fine.
And you've just run a Cat6 cable out the window down to the basement, right?
Yeah, I wish I could actually, but I do sit here going, like, I constantly go back. Do you remember the original plan when they were going to run? Conroy was insisting they were going to run fibre up the apartment blocks in the cities. Yeah, that's the only way this place is ever getting above 130, and it's never going to happen, is it?
Well, that just about wraps up another episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to Chris for joining us for this week's show.
Pleasure again, folks.
And as is our usual habit, now's the time for you, Chris, to answer 3 quick questions. Where can people find your work online, your social media online, and which children's cartoon character is the all-time best?
Okay, so best place to find me is zdnet.com.au. For the socials, you can track me down on your own time. I won't help you find bad content. And the best children's character, not wanting to play into what Asher said the other week about South Park, but it's Randy Marsh. But other than that, other than Randy, the next best character is Muttley.
Oh,
Ooh,
good call.
Nice.
Old school.
Yeah. That show was all about Muttley just watching, who owns who, who's picking up whose poop.
Yeah.
Muttley's the evil genius. It's great.
I'm not sure who the Dick Dastardly is in this equation, and I'm worried that it's me. And as always, you can catch us online at Vertical Hold AU on Twitter, at verticalhold.com.au on the web, or via the Vertical Hold Facebook page.
And just a reminder, listeners, we're thrilled to have Aussie Broadband as our sponsor again this year, and they've given us a special promo code which gives new customers a $10 per month discount for 6 months when signing up online for an unlimited plan up to NBN 100. The promo code is vertical, so hopefully that'll come in handy for Aussie listeners shopping around for a great broadband service. As always, thanks for tuning in again. Don't forget to tell your friends about us, leave us a review, and help us spread the good word. Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support.
Yeah, that's the only way this place is ever getting above 130, and it's never going to happen, is it?
All right, that's a good cut.
I think we've beaten that poor dead horse again. Yeah. Enough.
You can't even turn it into soup. It's just a mush.
Glue of the week.
This is your Clag report for February.
I must breathe and then do the wrap. Well, that just about wraps up another episode of Vertical.